Hi, it's Cindy from Quilter's Cupboard in Ankeny, Iowa, and we're back again for part 3 of our Imagine Sew-Along. Today we're going to talk about machine stitches, best ways to applique with your machine, and kind of, some good ideas about maybe things to make your guys' life a little bit easier. I have started today with the Relax block. So I went ahead and prepped my backgrounds, and I went ahead and fused down my beach blanket. But I wanted to show you guys a couple little tips. I don't know how far along some of you guys have gotten, so I wanted to show you on the umbrella a couple good ways to do it. This is where we talked about last time, being able to put your pieces together, put them onto the applique pressing sheet, and then peel them off as a unit. But I wanted to show you guys, this was the block that I had the hardest time because my pieces just didn't seem to fit very well. If you notice my block here, which you may or may not notice, but it's a mirror image of what it shows in the book. Because I thought, well, maybe she forgot to mirror image it when she did it, but she didn't, because mine actually looks backwards. So I'm not quite sure why they didn't all fit together, but I didn't do this technique the last time. So that's why I wanted to share that with you guys. So as I put my bottom pieces down first. So all my little dots all have, if you guys can see, all have cut off ends. And then all of my flowered pieces all have sharp points. So I put my bottom guys down first, overlapped a little bit until it got to be the look that I want. And then I'm gonna go to, of course, my Steady Betty, because you guys know how much I love Steady Betty. And I am going to press those down. Now, I wish I had done that ahead of time, but of course I didn't because I wanted to show you guys how the whole thing worked. So let's see if I can. I can't. So we're gonna stop for just 1 second. I'm gonna press these together and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back, and I have pressed it, and so then it just peels pretty nicely off of my applique pressing sheet. So this was the other thing, that when you get residue left on that sheet, that's one of the really nice things about these Goddess sheets, is it just peels right off, if that should happen to you. Okay, so now I've got my piece ready to go, and then I can place it where I want on my block. What do I want on my block? That looks pretty good, just like that. Okay. Now, you guys know that I would then have gone back to the iron and actually press that in place, but since I'm using Steam Seam 2, it's going to stick really nicely for me. All right. So then what we have to decide is what kind of stitch should we use? So I am using my Destiny baby lock sewing machine, of course. They're my faves. And I've got 3 really nice blanket stitches. Whoops. That guy, which is an applique stitch, which ends up being the one I'm going to use. I have this one. Now, if you look at this stitch, it's flipped the wrong way. So if you have capabilities on your machine to mirror image it, we'll be able to flip it over. And then I also have this one. So you're wondering, well, what do they look like? Now, I don't know if you guys, well, you probably don't know, but I can adjust the width and length on my machine. So I've made some fiddling adjustments to those. So I wanted to show you guys these. So these are the way some of those blanket stitches sewed out. This first one is the one that I end up liking to be my favorite. It takes just straight stitches and then throws a zigzag stitch. Another straight stitch, throws the zigzag. This one's really nice, but it's a little denser along the edge. So it actually goes forward, backward, forward, then throws that zigzag stitch. A lot of you guys, that may be your only option, but it works really, really well. It's just a little denser edge. So it's gonna just be more visible is all. And then this one is a closer together version of this one, so you can kind of decide what you wanna do. And then this one actually took 2 stitches in between before it threw a zigzag. So this one I don't think is a good one for our projects, but I wanted to give you an idea of some of the ones that your machines might have. So this is the one I use. This is the settings that I like. So if we go back to that one, my width, now this will vary on machines that you guys might have, but the width I have at 2.5 millimeters and my length is at 2.5. So from what I hear, the perfect blanket stitch has the width and length the same. I don't know if I agree with that because I might like it a little bit wider. So on my machine, when I touch my buttons, you can actually see it in real life. So I think that is very nice. Now, how does it make a difference? Littler pieces, you might need to have a little closer together blanket stitch because if the piece is so tiny, if your stitches are too far apart, you're not going to have anything holding that piece down. So this is my create block that we did last time. And I wanted to show you up close a little bit. Let's look at here on a color. Can you see how far apart those stitches are? So they hold my piece down well, but they're not right on top of each other. And I think that's all I care about is that they're going to hold my piece down and still be flexible. Now, if this is on the quilt and we think the quilt's going to be washed, could you do those a little bit closer together? You can. Because remember, this is the only thing that's standing between you and those edges fraying is how close your blanket stitch is together. So let's take a look on the machine to see. Now, silly me thought, oh, you guys would get to see black stitches pretty nicely, which is great, but I really don't want black on this project. So what color bobbin threads did we have in there? Do you need to match it to each color that you're doing? I say no. I would just do a neutral bobbin, you know, a light gray or a creamy one. Some of that will greatly depend upon what or how good the tension is on your machine. Are you going to be able to see your bobbin tension come up? If you are, you might have to do matching. But I'm hoping that most of you guys will be able to get away with just basic. Okay, so we're going to do the gray one because I have gray thread sitting right here. All right, so let's see if we can thread the machine up like we should do. Sorry, my little guy twirled. You'd think I would know how to thread my sewing machine, wouldn't you guys? My machine has been places and it's not quite back to how it should be. There we go. Now don't get too jealous when I go to thread the needle here. Watch that. Look, it just did it for me. All right, and also going to pick that bobbin thread up for me as well. So I am a little spoiled, but baby locks are nice. Okay, so I'm going to pick this blanket stitch, and we're going to go back to the settings that I had there originally. Now, what kind of foot? This is just my regular foot. I can't really see exactly where that blanket stitch is going to fall. So that, to me, is not my best choice. I love to use the open toe foot, which is this guy right here. And there's a whole big space in there so that I can see exactly where that blanket stitch is going to fall. And I've turned the lights down on my machine a little bit so there wasn't quite so much glare for you guys. All right, so when I lower my foot and I start, now you can tie off if you want to. What I really enjoy doing on this one, I have a fancy new feature there, is it's going to tie off for me automatically. And I've engaged my pivot function. So see how that foot raises every time I stop, which makes it great for turning. When I start again, it's going to lower. My blanket stitch. Oh, pay no attention, just continue on. There we go. So I'm going to gently turn it as I go. Now you guys saw how it threw that, I called it a zigzag stitch, but that straight stitch that goes to the left. Before I pivot or turn, I want to make sure it's completed that. So this stitch takes 2 stitches, throws a straight stitch. You guys see how that's working? So I would never, let me see if I can stop it part way. 1 more stitch. So at this point, I would never turn there because when it goes back, it's going to form a V. And that's something we don't want to happen. So before I would turn, now would be a time that I could turn. So let's go up to this corner and see what we're going to do. So this is the perfect point. But if I turn here, now when it throws that zigzag or that straight stitch, it may not be where I want. So what I'm going to do is let it throw that straight stitch right along my edge where I'll never be able to see it. Now I've got a couple stitches to get down before you're going to notice that there's another stitch. So it is just a little bit of practice. Now I do have a nice beginning applique class coming up if you want really good hands-on stuff. So let's just finish outlining this piece. So that's where that pivot. So if I didn't have pivot, and I'll turn it off for a second, but I have fancy new stuff, so I'm not sure I know how to turn it off. There we go. It's going to lower my foot. So normally for you guys, you're going to just raise your foot up in the back and lower it. Well, hello, Oliver. Excuse me, honey. Thank you. This is how I have to sew sometimes with my little Ollie. So we'll just put Ollie around my neck, and we'll call it good and finish up what we're doing. So it's very acceptable if your stitches change a little bit when you have a cat around your neck. Completely understand if that has to happen. So here we go. So we're going to just continue around the piece. Now where do I want that stitch to end? My straight stitch should be just right along the edge of my fabric. Can you guys see how we're just keeping it right straight? Now when I get to the end, I'm going to have my machine tie off, which just takes 3 stitches in the same place. It cut my threads and raised my foot. So I have a nice little blanket stitch that just goes right along the edge of my fabric. Now, do I want to keep the same color all the way around, or am I going to change to orange here and green here? That's a personal preference. I'm going to stick with the gray all the way around this because I don't want to outline those individual pieces. But on my blanket over here, I'm probably going to do green here. I'm going to do blue around my blanket. So as you can see on my Create, I did change colors with each one of my fabric choices. Now with applique, I could have done this all in black, would have highlighted and really stood out quite a lot. I wanted it to blend just a little bit. So hopefully that gives you guys a good start with blanket stitching and applique. It's just a matter of playing. Now one more quick tip I wanted to tell you guys about is when you are doing your blanket stitch, some of your machines are going to just cruise over here beautifully just like mine does through the couple layers, but some of yours are not going to like it as well. So I would recommend that you put a stabilizer on the back. This is just a tearaway stabilizer. So when I'm all done, it's just going to tear nicely away from those stitches. And it's okay if it leaves a little bit behind it, but it's going to give my fabric a little bit more body. The other thing you can do if you don't want to use this is to make sure that you give your fabric a really good pressing with some best press, and that will give you a little bit more body to it as well. Because we want all of these stitches to lay perfectly flat and not have any puckering to them. So I hope that that's very helpful. Next month we're going to come back and talk about if we're going to finish just a single block, how we're going to accomplish all of that. So I hope you guys have had fun, and we'll get to see you soon. Thanks so much.